Before we plot out the narratives of the Buster clan, we need to get the giggles out of their room first. The reputation of Buster has an alluring history in itself, indisputably so. Buster isn't just a name you bequeath to your dog, or horse, or even to your rabbit, nor is it slang given to complimentary nouns, such as belly buster, filibuster, bronco buster, gangbuster, crime buster, trust buster, blockbuster, and so on. Nor is a nickname attributed to a fellow for either being clumsy or anonymous. Buster is an Americanism. It is as good and stereotyped as apple pie. If Buster were to have its own epigram, it would be nothing more than, "Hey Buster, watch where you're going, you Nimrod." Rooting as far back as the 1830s, quite possibly as early as the 1820s, Buster has sprouted from its unknown origin and dispersed its seeds transversely past the Mississippi River, by the way of the railroad, and blooming well into the 20th century in Hollywood, something akin to the legend of Johnny Appleseed, but without the nobility. The evolution of what was once considered an insult by referring a man as a buster, an incomplete lad who broke things, or simply put, busted things, to raising the standard of calling an average Joe Buster, can be seen through the stories of newspapers at the end of the Victorian era through the Great Depression. The Dictionary of Americanism, first printed in 1848, referred Buster as anything large in size, a man of great strength, a common vulgarism which appears to be of foreign origin. But 4 editions later, by 1877, Buster became a roistering blade, a dashing fellow. The height of the Buster nickname lasted for over a half a century preceding World War II through the baby boomer generation. With it, there was Buster Brown, Buster Bear, Buster Bunny, Buster John from the short stories, plantation pageants, a slew of athletes with the first names Buster, and most notoriously, Buster Keaton, the silent film star. Despite that the nickname had never officially died out, in fact it carried well into the 21st century, however the popularity of the name did dwindle under the frostbite of faddish trends. In the gaming world today, it has a different meaning, often referring to weapons, perhaps because these weapons would bust things up, under the enterprises such as Mega Man, Final Fantasy VII, and Hot Wheels Battle 5. Now, what does this have to do with the Buster family? Was it their surname influencing American culture? Probably, or probably not. But they weren't absent from the scene either. The Busters were, like all things American, pioneers. They began as farmers and slave owners. While being part of the benefits and consequences of Manifest Destiny, they headed out to Texas, California, and Colorado before the consolidation of the Pacific Railroad and shortly after the gold rushes. They fought in all American wars, including several minor ones, and yes, did have brothers and cousins combat on opposite sides of the Civil War. Although once divided, unification prevailed under the Reconstruction of the South for those who had stayed in the South. They became entrepreneurs, politicians, bureaucrats, sheriffs, ranchers, teachers, writers, and actors. They were murdered and committed murder. They gambled, embezzled, and served their communities to the best of their abilities. With a timeline expanding 3 centuries, they undeniably made an impression, whether positively or negatively, or even conjointly, depending on the angle when we look through the prism. The Buster surname is a unique one, not because these burly Brits arrived to America amidst a historical whirlwind to bust through prejudice and the frontier. No, although there is some truth behind that notion. Instead, their surname appeared to have evolved. First settling in the Piedmont region of the Commonwealth of Virginia, their odyssey may have begun as the Bustards. 2 sources suggest the Bustard name conceivably may have been inspired by birds, one that of a crane, which is known as a bustard bird, the other that of a buzzard, which in Latin Avis tarde translates to clumsy bird. Both sources credited to physical appearances, either to a handsome man or a bearded man resembling a buzzard. The Bustard coat of arms does display attractive crane-like birds which appear strong and dominating, and yes, on both sides of the bird's head, the feathers do favor prickly beards like a buzzard. The earliest record of the Bustard can be contributed to an Anglo-Saxon origin during the Middle Ages in England. Therefore, the Bustard name originated from England rather than Ireland, and yet this particular clan of people did make a home in Ulster, Ireland, but after they made their home in Virginia first. Even the surname Buster has been recorded in both England and Ireland, but we'll get to those details later. Although the Busters were fully English and mixed with the Scotch-Irish blood, they surely did mix heritage and race in America throughout the generations. It began with the second generation, after the Revolutionary War, while the early 1800s embarked on a new ideology and government. The Bustards may have dropped the "ard" and simplified it with the thereby recreating a new identity, the Busters. One of my theories personally why Bustard may have changed could be to the idea that it looks a lot more like bastard. In that instance, it may have been used as a blasphemous arsenal from their foes, I'm almost certain. And perhaps the pronunciation made it difficult for some to enunciate correctly, depending on dialect. Is it Bustard or Bustard, or more like Bustard, which sounds more similar to Buster? Despite an 18th century will having been written with both Bustard and Bustard by the notary, the oldest son of William, on the other hand, actually signed his name as Buster. So, that brings us back to the anomaly of the name. Since the last name is so unique, odds are most people being related to the first Buster to arrive in the United States are extremely favorable. The exception being from the afflicted souls who were enslaved and, by the complex nature of the laws, had thusly inherited the surname as a default. I also wouldn't doubt a few of those who were forcibly born out of the vice. Then there were some, from Britain and Ireland, who settled in the East Coast after the Revolutionary War, but appear to not have populated a region as much as the Virginia William with his 6 sons and 1 daughter. Also, there were those who immigrated from other countries, such as Czechoslovakia, Germany, Russia, and Mexico, but their surnames had been altered either for conveniences or misinterpretation through the immigration process. My heritage chart and mynamestats.com has thusly acknowledged 74% of Busters are of Anglo descents, while 16% are of African descents as of today. Therefore, there are over 300,000 descents from the first Buster generation, William Sr., with an estimation of 3,380 who continue to carry on the Buster name well into modern times, including Dr. John Buster, the first to transplant human embryos in 1984, Kendall Buster, a world-acclaimed sculptor, and Bobbette Buster, a screenwriter, documentary producer, and a professional storytelling lecturer. Even though there are Busters all over the country, Virginia, Kentucky, Texas, California, Missouri, Colorado, New Mexico Territory, Oklahoma, Nebraska, and Kansas will mainly be focused on. After researching through thousands upon thousands of newspapers and historical documents about these people's lives that were published in such a public arena, extraordinary stories, and at times unthinkable ones, were revealed. And thank God, otherwise this will be a very boring book. You will see distinguishable patterns of heroism, arrogance, bigotry, cleverness, benevolence, violence, and a fierce stubbornness defining the pioneer spirit. But considering the last 300 years tended to be dominated by men, often neglecting the female roles in American society, regrettably most of the narratives will center on the male descendants with only a narrow splinter on the women. I wish there could be more, but I can only work with what is available. So to begin at the source, we search for a connection between Britain and Virginia which tied the knot. That knot was a commoner named William Buster.